I don't have any amended bio notes for Emile, but I know him better than Dale. So I spent a lot of time in Alberta, and I've listened to a lot of very good talks done by Emile. So I'm excited to see this next presentation. He spent over 40 years in agronomy, and he says immersed and genuinely walked a billion fields, I would say. And he's going to stand in front of the mic and speak directly into the mic the whole darn time. So that's also going to be exciting. I can't wait. He was a brief stint in the Peace Country, if everyone knows where that is. And that was with Elanco back in the day. As a current Corteva employee, I had to mention that. After that, Alberta Ag for 14 years, and then Wesco Fertilizer. You're not dating yourself at all here. And then a training and development manager role with Nutrien Ag. And he has moved on from Nutrien to focus some more on personal time, but we dragged him back into the fray to give us a little bit of his perspective, the Western look on artificial intelligence and agronomy. So welcome, Emile.
Well, good morning, and thank you, Tammy. Let me start off by saying it is certainly my pleasure to have this opportunity to spend this time with you, share some thoughts, but also to be with you for the next couple of days. And so I start off by saying I'm one of those, Todd, I'm one of those seasoned agronomists, I guess, and I don't know how many years that to become a seasoned agronomist, but yeah, many presentations, probably millions of acres that I've been on over the years. And you know, our industry, I think we sometimes forget how rich it really is. I've watched people leave our industry and come back, and I think we need to be reminded sometimes how great this industry is to work in. So again, it's my pleasure to be with you today. Okay, I am a seasoned agronomist, but I am not an IT specialist that is immersed in AI every day. I'm going to give you a lot of thoughts, opinions on what I've seen, heard, what I've experienced to some extent. But you're going to start asking me IT questions. I'm certainly not going down that path. Let me start off by looking at the title and artificial intelligence and agronomy. So is the cart ahead of the horse? And I remember telling somebody, this is my title, and I remember getting a lot of eye rolls. But realistically, is the cart ahead of the horse? And I, you know, my simple answer to that is maybe, but you know, realistically, that's okay. And it's simply because if you look at most new technologies that have come along, what do? We take all that new technology, we dump it into the cart, right? Along with dumping all that into the cart, what do we also dump in with it, right? All of our visions, beliefs, predictions, forecasts, and dreams of what this technology can do. And really, that's not new. Okay, think back to a lot of the technology that we've seen over the years. There's many young faces here. You won't even remember when personal computers came on the forefront, but really, the chatter, the talk, the promises, the visions, the dreams that were going to be done with this were phenomenal. And that's okay. That's where we start with this. We go fast to go slow, right? I think at the end of the day. So when Tammy first phoned me, she said, we want you to answer this question, will artificial intelligence replace agronomists? And really my simple answer is no. But going forward, just as the other speakers have said, that at some point AI will likely be a good, possibly maybe even a very good tool. But we're going to go fast to go slow. We're going to slow this thing down probably to figure out where we actually are going to use it. I find it interesting. I'm a subscriber to Maclean's magazine, and as I was preparing this talk, what shows up on my mailbox is the November edition of Maclean's magazine. And what's the title? The Age of AI and the Future of Humanity. And you know, if you want to look for a scary image and a scary title, the entire magazine was full of articles, and good articles. They were good to read, but it was all kind of futuristic. The interesting thing is that image that's on the front page, that was generated by AI, right? And I listened to the editor of the paper talk about how they generated that, and they actually used to be or not to be from Hamlet as part of the indicators to AI to develop this image. Anyway, in her interview, she said, AI won't replace workers, but workers using AI may replace other workers who don't use it. That's a pretty bold statement to make specific to AI. I would turn that around and say, okay, if you look at technology, if most of you didn't embrace computers as they came along, if you didn't embrace the software that you use, where would you be, right? Is AI going to be any different than that? We got a lot to sort out with AI, but we've got a lot of things to sort out in technology in general. This graphic I found online. I will say I stole it. It comes from I think an irrigation equipment manufacturer somewhere across the ocean. But I really like the way it depicts the agronomist here. And I think the key thing you want to look at is where's the agronomist position? Right in the center of the page. And I still believe that the agronomist is the center hub of all things agronomic. Now, there's about 5 different bullets there around, and it says connected to the field, an enabler of technology, big data advisor, we'll talk about that a little bit more, master of digital tools, well, you're already doing some of that, and a source of knowledge. If I look at those 5 bullets, if I were to tell you which 2 are the most important in my mind, number 1 and number 5, connected to the field, source of knowledge. You'll make yourself pretty quickly irrelevant if you aren't connected to the field and you don't focus on a source of knowledge. And when I talk about knowledge, I think there's always a misunderstanding about knowledge because we talk about knowledge as if it's education. Education is one component. It's the culmination of education and experience that really makes knowledge, right? And so number 1 and number 5 are really key. The other 3 to me are the tools that you're going to use as an agronomist, and I consider you to be the center hub of activity. So I'll just give you a quick few bullets of my some overview. Then I'm going to go into some other examples, and I'll finish up with this same slide, basically. If I were to suggest anything to you, I'd say as agronomists, I think you need to continue to be curious. You need to be aware of what's going on in AI. I think you need to think a little bit about whether you're an innovator or an early adopter. I'm very quick to admit that I'm an early adopter. I am always curious. I am very curious on things. I like to know what's going on. I like to be aware. I like to watch the innovators, but I'm not the innovator. But be damned, I'm the early adopter. When I can see it working for my customers, if I can see it working for myself to help me get my job done better, I'm going to jump in with both feet. And I've done that all the way through my career. Maintain a network, people network. When I retired a couple of years ago, I said to a lot of our staff, a lot of my colleagues that I worked with, and I said, I think I've been practicing artificial intelligence all along for the entire part of my career because I've made a career out of picking the brains of people smarter than me and more experienced than me. I can't tell you how many times I interfaced with specialists, researchers, Ag Canada, university people, and bounce ideas, right? Colleagues bounce ideas back and forth, discuss. What do you think? So often we're faced with subjective decisions, you know, as much data as we have, as much information as we have, we still have to make a subjective decision, and that's a challenge. Focus on the science of agronomy. And I think a couple of the speakers before me here have alluded to that, but I think all of us, all of you, all of us have the responsibility to continue to focus on the science of agronomy. Let's not lose sight of the science. I'm afraid when I see so much agronomy that's based on opinion rather than based on the science, right? And let's not lose sight of that. But I think we all have a responsibility to make sure that that happens. Hone your agronomic skills, continue to test yourself, challenge yourself. And then these last 3 I'm going to talk a little bit more about in a minute, but identify needs, provide answers, and address profitability and probability. Okay, so It's 1997. We'll roll back the film here. It was my first year working with Wesco Fertilizers, and one of our suppliers had given us some GPS equipment to work with, and there were a number of us told that strongly encouraged to develop some precision agriculture techniques. I mean, precision agriculture was the buzzword at the time, and we needed to do this. Now, my inset picture there is a little bit fuzzy, but in the cab is a great big hard encased tablet computer, monochrome screen, and it weighed probably 20 pounds. But and you can see the GPS equipment that was on the outside of it. Now, it was rudimentary at the time, but we were continually pushed to try to develop some applications. And I just struggled with the technology because we could hardly maintain signal so often. So I'm in northern Alberta, and when I had, what I would often do is draw the perimeter of the field. At that time, we didn't have Google Maps, so we'd draw the perimeter of the field, drive around the field, and map it. Well, if anything was in my way to the south of me, a tree line, a knoll, anything, I'd lose signal. The only way I could maintain signal when I went through a patch like that was just to boot it. You go a little faster. Well, that worked okay until I hit a couple old combine ruts one field and put my head through the roof. So, we had challenging times. And in the end, at the end of the day, really, we were just playing with it. And I would develop maps like this. I download them into my computer and put them in MS Paint. That's how rudimentary it was. And I tried to identify the soil sampling spots we had. And we had done. And yet, how much differential correction did we have in those days? Was I anywhere near in terms of meters? But they wanted us to play with it, and that's where it ended up. Obviously, the technology has come a long ways, right? Variable rate maps, you guys have seen them, yield maps, all those kinds of things, great tools coming forward. It's still a work in progress in my mind for what I see out there. And, I look at this comment, Bruce Erickson, Purdue University. There's a lot of roadkill in precision agriculture. Managing zones turned out to be a lot more complicated than people realized. And, it's a learning endeavor. And again, I started 25 years ago, and I look at where we are today. So GPS was introduced about that time. What's the number one application of GPS on the farm since then? Auto steer, right? Amazing, pretty simple. Draw an A-B line and move your equipment over. It's amazing, how much pressure we were getting, how many visions and dreams there were at the time. Develop this precision, manage every acre. We go fast to go slow. I read this in a farm magazine not too long ago. There was a survey done in Eastern Canada, and they commented about, they did a farm survey, and basically farmers were saying that technology providers were often creating solutions looking for a problem. It's one of the frustrations that farmers were saying. And I think there's some lessons from all the precision farming stuff we've done. If we're going to start to incorporate AI, there's some lessons in some of this, right? When we're dealing with growers, create solutions looking for problems. Expect farmers to take the risk. That's been some of the reality, right? I need you, you spend the money and I will work with your yield maps and I'll work with your, with all the technology to try to find you some solutions. And number three, the third point that these growers made was that they were asked to make business decisions without any indication of ROI. So they were playing around with that. I'm kind of encouraged by some of the stuff that Dale talked about because I think he's going down the right path on some of this. Okay, so we're talking AI. We might as well ask ChatGPT, much like Tammy did, and how is AI changing the role of agronomists? And it came up with about 12 bullets. And each one of those bullets, it came up with a bit of a description. I don't have time to go into all the detail there, but what I will tell you is I thought the summary wasn't all that bad. It gave me a reasonable summary of and in a lot of cases, opinions of where this technology is at and where it might be going and how it might affect the role of agronomists. I did a Google search at the same time, and so do Google search, you get a whole bunch of websites. If I went through all those websites, I'd understand some of that as well. And I thought, well, what did Chat GPT do? It just made it easier for me, right? It summarized it for me as long as I agree with it. But let's talk about a few of those bullets. So data management, data analysis. A couple months ago, my son works for Edmonton Economic Development, and he invited me. He said, come to this conference. He says, we have some AI stuff going on. And so I sat in a session by AMII, which is Alberta Machinery Intelligence Institute. It's a spin-off AI from the University of Alberta. And they had a panel discussion, which was really intriguing. So they had 3 companies represented. These 3 companies all did work with AI. The first one was a fellow that worked in robotics, actively working in robotics and using AI. The second one was doing what he called crisis solutions management. And the third one worked for an engineering firm that did a lot of work for the petroleum refineries around Edmonton, a lot to do with logistics in his case. What I found really intriguing, the one takeaway that I got from all 3 of them in this data management, they all appreciated what AI could do in terms of computing power, right? Reams and reams of data, it can generate stuff out of it. But the real eye opener for me is when all 3 of them said, when we have an issue, we go looking for data. When we get the data, we spend 90% of our time verifying that the data is good. Once we know that, we'll run a data analysis. Once we've done the data analysis, we spend 90% of our time checking to see if that data analysis makes any sense. Then we ask it for a prediction. When we get the prediction, the AI prediction, then we spend 90% of our time trying to sort out that part of it as well. So, data, again, in our business is the same. This was a prediction, 2017, digital data collection and analytics has the potential to transform modern agriculture. Transform, it's pretty big. That's 6 years ago now. And we're still challenged with collecting a lot of that data on a consistent and accurate basis. I guess if I were to suggest anything in terms of the data side of things, if I were asked, I would say I think it's so crucial that we understand what our needs are and what our customers' needs are. And I appreciated that Dale's saying that or somebody saying that it's all about what their actions are. Todd was mentioning that. It's what their actions are and not just ask them what their needs are. But I think as agronomists, you need to identify what are your needs. What do you really need to get your job done better? Know what the questions of the day are, short-term, long-term. And then when you start to look at collecting data, I still find we collect, you can call it data, in some cases you just call it information. We are collecting information and data for the sake of collecting information and data sometimes. Once you've identified the needs, you have an issue to address, collect what you need to have to address the issue. And forget the nice to have, unless you have some other purpose for the nice to have. I did 8-10 years of agronomic training, and we had 2 weeks to do a whole pile of agronomic training, and I was pushing our agronomists all the time. What's the need to have? What's the nice to have when we're training agronomists? To me, this is no different. What's the need to have in terms of information? And the last one here is a goal that I think we should all set for ourselves, and that is that we should look to try to provide answers and not just information. We are guilty of providing information too often. And I'll give you an example, and I'm not trying to beat on anybody, but a farmer comes in and asks somebody, is verticillium wilt going to be a problem in my canola in our area? And the sales rep goes over to the computer, checks out Google, goes to the Canola Council website, pulls off verticillium wilt and hands the information to him. What does that really mean? You've just provided him information. You haven't actually answered his question. You haven't given him an answer. So that's the challenge. Going forward, if I look back on all my years in agronomy, I think of what AI might help me with, certainly in terms of the weather side of things. And I don't mean weather forecasting. I mean, what's the impact on the crop? I had a grower call me, a key grower that I worked with, This last summer, his emergence was pretty good, but we started the season very dry, very little soil moisture. We get to the end of June, we get 1.5 inches of rain. We get a couple of new tillers generated on the wheat. And now what? Do I spray a fungicide? How much extra yield am I going to get? If AI can help me with any of that kind of stuff, it would be great. On the soils, can't leave soils alone, John. But I'm a firm believer that we do not spend enough time understanding the soil beneath our feet. And all the 40-some years that I've been doing this, those are the two most important tools that I've used, soil sampler and a shovel. And I'm not a soils guy. I'm an agronomist, but I'm not a soils guy to the depth that John is. But I think we so often overlook an understanding there. Last slide here, I'll tell you just crop diagnostics. I've always had a very active interest in crop diagnostics. I did a lot of training on crop diagnostics. Some people would say it takes the right attitude, knowledge, and ability to do crop diagnostics. Other people would say it just takes gray hair or no hair. And so what are we talking about, gray hair or no hair? It's just simply experience. And so one of the supplier agronomists said to me a few weeks ago when I was asking him a little bit about his thoughts on AI, he said, you know, if it could just capture my experience. You know, he's been in the industry 25 years. He said, I deal with a situation yesterday that was similar to what I dealt with 10 years ago. But do you think I can remember and exactly how did we deal with that, et cetera, et cetera. Here's the other part of crop diagnostics. I always say, don't jump to conclusions, follow a process, be able to defend your conclusions. And the challenge with AI is that right now it doesn't explain any kind of reasoning. And so, you know, those are really key. Profitability, I'd like to see us talk, when we talk profitability, I'd also like to see us, where we can, talk a bit about probability. We talk about all these biologicals and stuff. You know, farmers are inherent risk takers, but give them some sense of what the probability is. If it's 45%, it's a good year. He's topped out everything else. He wants to play around with something. He'll take a chance on a 45% probability, but we don't have those numbers. Anyway, that's where I'm at. I covered this earlier, so I just put it up there again to finish.